The Kris is one of Asia's most iconic blades, and it is claimed by a number of countries, but few as fiercely as Indonesia and the Philippines.
Some are saying it's a dying art, but for me, I don't agree that it's a dying art. There's still a lot of smiths there and a lot of blade collectors that are buying these.
In both countries, it is part of their identity, their history. Both countries claim it as their own.
So the Indonesian, they call it the Keris.
Keris, okay.
But here, this is the Kris.
And so today we're going to be making 2 Kris blades, one in each country, and right in the heartland of where the Kris came from in each respective nation. I want to see who is truly keeping this blade culture alive, who still earns the right to call the Kris theirs. Let's find out.
He's been making these for 50 years.
Yes, he make the Kris. It takes 1 month to make a whole Kris. Yeah.
Crazy.
We start out in Iligan City, and it doesn't take long. I'm just stumbling upon Smith's roadside making Kris.
So I feel like there's a corner just like this in every small Filipino town. Just a bunch of blacksmiths carving out pretty much everything, all kinds of work, blades. Of course, you need those blades for cockfighting. But there is, at least in this one, some dude carving out a display Kris. You know, it's not for use anymore, but it's still in the culture here in Mindanao.
It's a pretty good sign. I'm in the right place.
But it's not quite what I'm after. Doesn't quite have that artisanal level of replication of a traditional Filipino Kris. I'm wondering if there are artisans out there that can still make Krises at that level.
To really understand the Kris and its connection to the Philippines, I believe you've got to go to its epicenter, to the heart of Moro territory, the city of Mawi. And nowadays, it's not really the safest place. Indeed, it's kind of become the epicenter of Muslim extremism within the country.
I have to fight every day until this conflict is resolved. Islam!
Simply reaching the place involves going through this maze of military checkpoints and barracks. And when you finally pull into town, it's pretty clear that what you've entered has very recently been a war zone. There's just row after row of these completely destroyed buildings, peppered with bullet marks. And they stand as this remnants of the 5-month war that erupted here in May 2017, where Filipino ISIS-affiliated groups clashed with government forces, resulting in just massive casualties on both sides. And today, this side of the town seems completely destroyed and empty. And while I've heard that this area is in the process of rebuilding, I see nothing but just a destroyed city. Here's hoping that the Filipino Kris culture has not been destroyed in the same way that the houses have. It's time to find a Kris maker.
All right, guys, today we are in Togaya, not too far from Mawi, and oddly enough, we're here to make a Kris. I'm trying to find as much of an artisanal interpretation of a Kris as you can currently find here in Mindanao, what is often referred to as the Moro Kris.
These guys are Moro Kris makers, blacksmiths who usually spend their days banging out tools. Today though, it's all about the blade. They've got mountains of axe heads to crank out, but I roll up asking for a Kris, and without even blinking an eye, it's no problem for them.
Alright guys, so the process starts out very much the same way as I have seen with every other Filipino blade that I have ever seen created. And that is with leaf spring. It is like the universal choice of steel for Filipino blades here.
It's usually ripped off an old truck, and I'm convinced this stuff is the foundation for every Filipino farm tool, jungle knife, working blade across the entire country. It's nothing fancy, just raw, reliable, and it's built to last. We're heating it up and we are cutting it to size. These chunks that we've cut out are small, really small, way smaller than the blade. And that's because up here in Mawi, they do things a little bit differently. I'm used to seeing Filipino smiths grind away, get rid of a ton of steel, and use a lot of stock removal.
However, they seem to be doing things very, very manually here. Everything is hammered both to cut and to get the shape.
Here, they're hammering it, stretching it out and flattening things, shaping it by hand, or by hammer at least. All of it.
Alright, so we can really start to see this sort of blade shape taking form now. They've maybe taken it in and out of the fire 3 or 4 times, and it's already really taking shape. Pretty cool stuff to see it just hammered out like that.
Power goes out here from time to time, but nobody really seems to care. This forge has its own lungs, these PVC pipes fitted with bamboo push rods, and their ends capped with these stacks of cut rice sacks.
They just literally have these 2 bamboo poles on sticks, and they're just able to churn away at this forge. Incredible. I mean, that worked perfectly well. Now.
The team here works in unison, passing the hammers around, swapping in and out when their arms get tired. It's a grind. We hit it, cool it, and we do everything again and again. But after just a few rounds, you can really start to see things take shape. The blade is coming together.
It's really taking shape. There is no wave in place just yet. I'm not sure if they're going to hammer that in or if they're going to cut it in. I don't know if you can hear anything I say at all. It's so loud here, but I hope you can.
Once the blade is the right length, it's time to cut. Out comes the chisel, and we begin hammering in the tang. That tapered wedge thing that is going to be buried in the handle at the bottom of the knife. 2 cuts are wedged in either side, and then the tang gets hammered clean. With our short, kind of stubby looking blade starting to take shape, it's time to quench it. Lock in that hardness before we get to carving out those waves. To do this, it gets a quick dunk in water, just enough to lock in the heat.
Alright, so it's time to form the famous wave of the Kris. This is time now for the sock removal. I thought maybe that they would forge it, but again, I think nowadays, modern grinder, it's just a lot easier. Let's cut that bad boy in.
There's no rush, no rulers, just getting into the groove and cutting those curves into shape, one pass at a time.
I'm telling you guys, thank God they invented safety flops in the Philippines. All these guys would be completely toeless without them.
And to my surprise, with no templates, no measurements, and without even losing any toes, that beautiful, iconic Kris blade is starting to take shape. It's like these guys have done it 1,000 times.
Honestly, this seems to be the mother of all grind jobs. We have been just working away at this thing. It looks red hot just from the grinding. You've got that kind of purpley blue color emerging on the surface now. All right, guys, there we have it. Close to looking like a Kris now. We're about to fire it up one more time.
We heat it up one last time, and let's be real, this wouldn't be a Filipino blade without tempering it the signature way, straight into a bath of used jeepney oil.
I think we're gonna just polish it off one more time and we're close to good. Then the handle. All right, there we have it, guys. One Kris dagger, at least how it is sort of constructed in the modern way up here in Mawi, Philippines. And I mean, it is already beautifully polished. It looks sharp as hell. It is hot in my hands. I think what's missing now is the handle and the scabbard.
Now, yes, the Kris was born in Java. That's where the oldest examples come from, but it moved across the archipelago by trade, conquest, and just through cultural exchange, and it took on new meaning as it went. And in the Philippines, especially in the south, it didn't just arrive, it took root, and it became something else entirely. Here, the Kris, sometimes called the Keris or Kalis, it didn't come quietly. It was taken up by various Filipino ethnic groups, but no one truly claimed it like the Moro people did.
So the Moro are the largest group of non-Christian people in the Philippines. So their history are rich, started centuries ago. So what you see here are all Moro blades.
The Moro were and are still fierce, renowned warriors who didn't just push back against the Spanish. They stood up to the American colonizers and the Japanese too, in truly notable ways. And each time they went into battle, they took with them the Kris.
Would you say the most iconic Moro blade is the Keris?
Yes, I would agree. That's the most iconic one. Whenever one hears of a Moro people, they would associate it with the Kris. It's a rich part of their culture. There's a lot of history in it. So the Indonesian, they call it the Keris.
Keris, okay.
But here, this is the Kris.
Unlike its Indonesian cousin, which is often more of a dagger and sometimes more ceremonial, the Filipino Kris evolved into a full-blown sword, very much intended for combat.
So here it's almost like more of a sword.
Yes, that is correct. The Keris is more for stabbing compared to the Moro Kris for slashing and hacking. Have a look. That is a modern Kris which was gifted by my late father.
It was longer, and it was shaped by just centuries of war, trade, colonization. The blade itself was often straight or just slightly wavy.
This is a straight Kris.
Straight blade?
Better in battle, the straight one, compared in handling the wavy ones.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But they don't look as cool.
Yeah, I agree. The wavy ones look cool.
Because waves, they're kind of cool and all, but this thing had to actually be good at killing.
That's one's a modern one, and the other ones here are the antique ones.
So let's take a look at maybe one of the antique ones and we can see if we can tell what the difference is.
So this is my most prized antique Moro Kris. It's made for combat. That's why it's supposed to be light.
Yeah, man, that's such a cool blade.
So this part, the guard, is a separate piece of metal.
Wow.
And this blade is a separate piece of metal.
And then they somehow joined it.
And they joined it.
Wow.
That's one of the difference. One of the main difference.
And you find this with pretty much all antique Krises.
Virtually all.
Wow, that's crazy, huh?
Can you see the patterns there?
Yeah, I can. I can instantly see that sort of
You can see that? Yeah.
Damascus-esque.
Correct. It is a Damascus pattern or laminated steel. So the earlier Kris are made of laminated steel. That's why you can see that pattern. But the modern Kris uses mono steel, one kind of steel.
So they used Damascus a lot at the time.
Yeah, you see that figure?
Yes.
Sometimes it will look like an elephant trunk. You can tell in that part of the Kris where it came from.
Really?
Yeah, what tribe it came from.
That's so cool.
That part.
So this is almost like a signature of which tribe the
Yes.
blade belonged to.
It was also symbolic. A Kris could signal rank, wealth, power, especially when the hilt was carved from ivory or inlaid with gold.
This one is ivory also. So that tells me that this is a Datu class. Kris meaning a Kris for the higher social class. Because only the Datus would have such Kris.
Yeah, really, really awesome blade, man. That's so cool.
And under Spanish rule, elites in Luzon and Versailles, they started commissioning their own versions, not truly for combat. So it continued evolving even more from there. It really broadened the designs of Kris you could find within the Philippines. There's some more flashy examples, some with sort of Spanish-inspired metalwork. They're sort of more for show.
What do you think the general knowledge of Filipino blades amongst the Filipino public is? I guess it's not that big overseas, but do people take pride in this stuff, or do they just think of it as this kind of, I don't know, forgotten era?
Just like the balisong, they still take pride in it, but some are saying it's a dying art, but for me, I don't agree that it's a dying art. There's still a lot of smiths there and a lot of blade collectors that are buying these.
We head over to the handle maker spot.
Hello. Salam alaikum. Ah, another Kris.
He's already locked in, carving intricate patterns into a different Kris. At this new location, we see Kris blades everywhere.
This guy in his little workshop was working on one. As soon as we came here, neighbors pulled up with this giant, like 2-meter long Kris sword. It's crazy. So maybe this is just like the Kris area in the Philippines. I don't know, but there seems like there are a lot of them.
Honestly, it's kind of reassuring. I took a little bit of risk coming to this part of Mindanao, but I did so hoping to find the last bastion of Kris making culture in the Philippines. And seeing it like this, still alive, it's pretty rewarding. To start out with the handle, the shape is sketched into a solid block of wood. First, it's hacked roughly into form with a knife, and then the grinder comes out, whittling it down into form. They cap the handle and lock these sheaths with brass rings, and they weld them together the traditional way. A foot-powered oil torch kicks up flame. It's powered by this foot crank bellows, and it's used to melt solder along the seams of the brass edges and seal everything together. It's old tech, but it is doing things right up here in Marawi. Back to the handle, and we've sort of given up on the wooden pattern. Instead, we grab a bone handle, drill a hole in it, and cut a wedge so that the blade fits nicely inside. The Moro Kris. It is cool to see this legacy still alive. There's Moro communities still churning these things out at volume. But the finer details and the meaning behind them, the tradition, I'm afraid that they've been disappearing. That folded steel Damascus look, the intricate split cross guard, those curved flares along the base of the blade, they're all mostly history now, at least from what I can see. So I'm taking things back to where Kris culture began, Indonesia, more than 1,000 years ago.
Alright, good morning people. We are here in the village of Ain Tong Tong, which is kind of like deep in the island of Madura, not far from Surabaya, and I'm here to explore the Kris making culture that still exists here within Indonesia, and this is the epicenter of Kris making culture, at least as it exists today.
More than 400 Kris makers are still at it, crafting these blades the Indonesian way. And man, it's a whole different world. Before any hammer even touches the steel, there's a ritual to be done. They honor the metal first at home and then at a cemetery.
This is the first step on making an agaman keris. So if someone order keris, they will prepare this offering, and then they will go to a house. The house may be 400 years old, and then they do the pray in old stone.
The idea is to link it with the wisdom and the blessings of those who came before. And it's this instant reminder that here, when making a Kris in Indonesia, it's not just about forging a weapon. It's about turning raw metal into a living symbol and trying to load it with the protection and guidance of generations past. These things are more symbolic than they are tools of war.
So interestingly, just around this graveyard, there's a bunch of different steels that have been left here to kind of get the blessing of the ancestors.
We start by bending iron and nickel to forge Damascus steel. The process begins by cutting the metal into strips with a chisel. Clamping them tightly together and heating them until they are red hot.
So we are like really getting that thing cooking, and as they work away, the sort of different community members from this village are all working on different stuff. There's young guys carving away at the handles, they're doing the engraving on different orders, and it is just cool to see the level of craftsmanship here, the level of detail that they are getting. Some of the sort of floral shapes that they have carved into these handles are ridiculous in quality. Like, I'm absolutely blown away, seriously, amazing work.
From there, the metal needs to be flattened and then, depending upon the Damascus pattern that they'll be imparting on the blade, the bar is either folded or twisted in various specific ways to create the final design on the blade. And this traditional patterning process is, I'm told, a secret, and I've been asked not to film it, but I'm pretty sure these patterning techniques are widely available now, so if you're interested, you can find them on YouTube, I'm sure. Eventually, the metal is flattened and extended to the approximate dagger rough length, laying the groundwork for what's to come.
We're moving along, but again, we have been hammering away for a minute at this point.
We keep flattening and flattening that blade before it becomes time to get to the curves.
I love this like little dugout these guys have. So they sort of have like an anvil in the middle, and then on either side of them they have this big divot, so they're a lot lower. They don't have to bend over all day. It's kind of smart.
Next, it's time to create that signature Kris wave. Here in Indonesia, it seems to me a lot of what was once done with Filipino blades, the techniques that were lost over time, they're still very much alive. And the crossguard here is to be crafted from two separate pieces of steel.
Once they get that blade nice and thin, it really doesn't take long to hammer in that wave. It's kind of surprising to me actually that the guys I saw in Mawi were doing it with stock removal, given just how quickly these guys seem to be able to do it with the hammering. It looks more efficient to me and quicker, if I'm honest. And I feel like you stand less chance of losing a toe if you do it this way.
This is the Keris, and then this is, they call it gonjo. Yeah. They call it gonjo. It's like a female symbol, and then it's male symbol, and then it's like yin and yang, something like that. It's like perfection.
So you always have two pieces.
Yes, it has to be complete each other.
Right.
Yang kecil ini tadi?
Jimatan.
Oh, okay. This Kris name Jimatan, a woman used it, and then usually they put as their hairpin to protect themselves. If something bad happen, they have.
They can kill someone.
Yes. Yes.
All right, guys. So it is time for the finishing. Different guys are stepping in, different crew. No longer is it one craftsman, one blade in these parts. It's kind of like each person is specialized in a specific job.
With the blades roughly forged into shape, it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to the finishing. That means calling in the grinders. For this step, a piece of steel destined to be the crossguard is measured out, cut, and then hammered firmly into place. Next, they carve out those symbolic patterns along the side of the blade. These represent specific time periods in Indonesian Kris making history.
I'm telling you, these guys can get pretty detailed with a grinder. Like, it's wild the level of intricacy that they use these things for.
Actually, every Kris maker could make that kind of their own symbol, but for them, they prefer to choose two signature where the Kris come from.
We finish shaping and polishing the entire blade with just hours of grinding until it's right on point. And then the crossguard is fixed in place.
He's been making these for 50 years.
Yes, he make the Kris, and then in the past, people the Kris making make from beginning to the end because it's not much people in the industry, and then it's take 1 month to make a whole Kris. Yeah.
We then take a stroll around the village. It's time to see that collaborative ecosystem in action. It's Kris maker after Kris maker, each one specializing in 1 or 2 parts of the process.
All I hear in this valley is just the sound of grinders. Every household, there's just grinders in every direction.
It kind of reminds me of what I've heard of Japan's Sakai region and its knife industry. And it's not long before we come to the handle and sheath maker. He's carving out wooden sheaths and handles in bulk. They arrive as rough templates, but then each piece is individually trimmed and paired with a blade so that it fits absolutely perfectly.
Essentially, we have like a drilled out piece of wood. It's just one solid block, so it's not 2 sides glued together, which is very, very different from what I've seen, again, in the Philippines. And then he's going to use this like long rasp to ensure that it fits perfectly for each blade. He has a ton of different sizes here.
The handle is put on at this stage also. And the final step is the pattern development. This step focuses on really bringing out the contrast in the Damascus pattern. After a thorough cleaning, the polished blade is immersed in an acid bath. And because the steel is composed of layers of different metals, each one reacts at a different rate. The acid corrodes the more reactive layers faster, gradually revealing that unique pattern beneath. And eventually the blade is removed, treated with a couple of brush strokes of lime to neutralize the reaction, and quickly dried off with a hairdryer.
That was cool. It's really awesome just how quickly that pattern starts to show, really come forward with that lime mix, and some awesome patterns there.
The finished blades are exquisite, and I'm really pretty blown away by the level of craftsmanship at this village. This place is about as cool as a niche craft village gets for me. It's this idyllic community nestled among rice fields, thriving on a centuries-old industry that passes tradition from one generation to the next.
Does he want to do this for his work, or is this just for fun?
This is my job.
Why has he decided to become a Kris maker?
Ya ingin apa ya melestarikan budaya itu mempertahankan.
Okay, he said that he want to keep the tradition that because his ancestors doing this for years.
Despite being super remote, they're crafting blades the old school way, preserving the tradition, the ceremony, the intricate designs that make this Kris truly unique, and they are selling them worldwide. Thanks to the likes of TikTok and WhatsApp. I am not sponsored in any way, but there are links in the description to some of the makers at the village. Check them out, it is a really cool place.
Guys, if you enjoyed this video, you might enjoy this video on making the barley song in the Philippines, the world's most banned knife. Unjustly so. And those guys have some pretty damn cool techniques. Check it.